Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon with you here, back from my intercontinental vacation. Eric Lopez is not here. He's got the week off. Well-deserved. Thank you, Eric, for filling in for me for 2 weeks. Joining me on location from Cleveland, Ohio, of all places, is Statboy Drew himself, the Leroy Jenkins of UCF Twitter Mafia, Andrew Glukov. What's up, Drew?
Leroy Jenkins.
Speaking of Leroy Jenkins, we're gonna dive into a little debate that you and I had with some hashtag content a little bit later in the show. And Bryson Turner is going to join us as well later on to talk about UCF Track and Field in the NCAA Nationals. Some good news, some shocking news out of there as well. But we start with the biggest story, I think, that we that occurred while I was gone. I guess we could say that, right, Drew? UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati will join the Big 12 Conference on July the 1st, 2023. The agreement was made between those three schools and the American to reach a buyout. The buyout, according to you, Drew, which was actually according to several other sources, but whatever, you wrote it. $18 million per school, the $10 million exit fee, plus an extra $8 million for getting out a few months early. Of course, you recall UConn paid $17 million to leave early in 2020. The $18 million is due over a 14-year period from 2023 to 2036. The first $10 million will be paid over 2 years, with the remaining 8 to be paid over the next 12. And that's according to some reporting by Sam Kahn Jr. and Justin Williams of The Athletic. Of course, obviously, that's a much less than people were thinking that UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati would have to pay. I think the American was trying to extract $45 million, weren't they?
Yeah,
that wasn't going to fly. But now UCF still has some expenses that they have to pay, particularly the admission fee, if you will, to the Big 12. But in the wake of the stadium naming rights deal with FBC Mortgage and also the 3MG Roofing Club, that deal that just came down, Terry Mahajer announced earlier this week, a little bit extra dough to play with here to pay off these extra fees. Kyle Nash is also joining us here on the show. And as we look at this, obviously, we thought that this would happen. The figures, I think, are in line with what we thought. I still think it's a little high considering that UConn paid less and had less leverage. But whatever, everyone gets to shake hands, pat each other on the back, and UCF and Cincinnati and Houston get to collect their Big 12 checks starting in July 2023. Your thoughts, Drew?
Everyone wins. Everyone wins in this one. Obviously the American wanted more money. I thought it was going to end up being a little closer to 20, but 18's good. 18's real good. And, the American gets the benefit of getting that 10 mil upfront quicker. The normal bylaws had that 10 million payment in 4 years. With this agreement, it's going to be paid by the three schools in 2 years. And then you have that little bit of revenue stream that's going to be going on progressively for the next dozen years. And what they do with the money, who knows? They can do similar to what they did when the Big East name was sold to the Catholic Seven for $100 million, where they split it amongst all the schools. The remaining schools got a larger share. In that case, during the days of the Big East, it was South Florida, Temple, to a lesser extent, Cincinnati and UConn. And then everyone else got a smaller share of that $100 million over the course of a number of years. They can do it like that, where the remaining schools get the lion's share of it, or they just pack it away for a rainy day, put it under the mattress. They're not sure how they're going to do it, but what they should do is probably save it, because as we know, the conference sometimes comes in and helps with cost overruns for like giant, big, New York Six bowl games and stuff like that. If the cost is too high, the conference comes to the rescue and helps. It helped UCF with the Fiesta Bowl twice, and the school is obviously very grateful for it. But the cash has to come from somewhere; it doesn't just magically appear. So, if I was the commissioner, I would hold on to the money and stash it away. But who knows what the conference is going to end up doing. But because the date has been set for the American Three to leave and enter the Big 12 on July 1st, 2023, the 6 new schools coming in have all announced officially that they too will be moving as of July 1st, 2020. They were basically
that was announced today, Wednesday. We're recording this on Wednesday, June 15th. That's UAB, Charlotte, FAU, North Texas, Rice, and UTSA all joining the American on the day that UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston leave. I'm sorry, Drew, go ahead.
No, that's fine. No, they were basically stuck in limbo until this got solved. So we heard for a while, we're getting close. You knew the clock was getting to that 11th hour, because if it got past June, you would have major problems on your hands. Conference USA actually gave that departing 6 an extension. Normally it was a 14-month waiting period. They stretched it a little bit and gave them a little more time, because they knew what was coming. They just wanted things taken care of. And those 6 obviously handled things a lot more amicably than the 3 that left earlier this year and will be joining the Sun Belt this fall.
Kyle, your thoughts on how this all kind of went down as well. I thought that, for all the wrangling and the public posturing, everything just kind of settled into exactly, more or less, like Drew said, where we thought it would.
I mean, I think it might have been me who on a pod many moons back compared this to the Drew Brees renegotiation with the Saints for his second contract. Like, didn't he sign that like at 11 p.m. the night before or something ridiculous like that? I had a feeling that this would be an 11th hour kind of scenario, because everybody's trying to shake out as best they can. You made the point about maybe you thought they overpaid compared to UConn. Here's the thing. Everybody
$1 million.
Okay, fine. Listen.
And remember that that UConn gave even less notice than these 3 did.
Right. But in this case, I feel like the American would have preferred these programs stay. And whereas UConn was addition by subtraction at the end of the day. And hey, listen, I'm down with an extra $1 million being spent getting rid of that stupid conflict trophy conversation that we keep having every year, because I'm over it.
You do realize that it never actually went away. It's still here,
No, I'm going to fight tooth and nail. I know
there's been more than one. That's the thing. The original was destroyed from weather. There's been more than one official trophy.
So
like legit official
believe
trophy.
that. Nope.
No. I talked to people in the know. The one that still exists is a real one that the school has. However, the original one did get destroyed. It was basically redone from an official standpoint.
Well, it was left out in the rain, right?
Yes, it got destroyed by the weather. I did confirm that with people in the know.
I didn't mean this to go this long, but saying,
let's pull it back.
Right, exactly.
But I think Kyle makes a very valid point of this going away. That is an example of how not to manufacture a rivalry.
Okay, we'll deal with that later. Back to what we were talking about.
It's called teasing, Jeff. Come on. No, but seriously, I mean, for all the posturing, everything, I think Drew was right. At the end of the day, this deal, when it got done, was going to help everybody. And when the game of chicken began, there would be concessions to see to it that it went through. Because at the end of the day, the sooner conference, not conference use, I'm sorry, the American Athletic Conference and Mike Oresco were in position to look for those Conference USA replacements, the better off for them as well. And all of that, the last thing they want to do is do anything to screw over their would-be entrants as well. And by the way, as fast-moving and fast-developing programs are, we are not talking enough about the Charlotte 49ers. Anyways, but yeah, I think there's a lot more dominoes here that had to fall, so concessions were going to be made on both sides. This is how you handle a deal. Drew, go ahead.
Well, Kyle Nash, ever the 49ers fan in some way.
I was going to point that out too, because he's definitely got a 49ers bias, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay, actually, Browner.
Charlotte is a rising program from an all sports standpoint.
For real.
Here's the thing, everyone, the key was get it done and get something out of it that's beneficial for everybody. And make everyone happy, because some schools wanted to burn bridges, but none of these three schools really wanted to. You still want to, you never know what's going to happen.
Except maybe Cincinnati with that flag stunt, but anyway.
Well, I think that, and that was more PR. But if you notice, they kind of pulled back after that.
You can't unring that bell.
Well, I'll be honest. Everyone got a little overexcited, and who can blame them? I mean, it's a big deal. You're especially from a school like Cincinnati, who, went from Conference USA to the Big East, was a BCS auto qualifying conference, gets knocked down a few pegs to the group of five, and now gets to go back to the have table. They were a little excited, maybe a little overexcited. If you notice, Houston and UCF had a lot more professional reactions to it. They didn't quite go over the top. And I think part of that is because they, never really been there, done that. You had the 1 year stint in 2013, but they really didn't drink from the fountain like Cincinnati did, for the 8 years that they were a BCS school. But in the end of the day, everyone just wanted to get something out of it. And the American got the extra $8 million for each school, so the 24. They get the early pay on the $10 million, which guarantees that money in their coffers, because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what is going to happen with the FBS, in the future. We don't know what college sports are going to look like in 15 years. It can look very different. I like to be a little optimistic and say that these conferences will still be around, but you really don't know. You can't really tell the future. So it gives the American the satisfaction of getting at least that $10 million relatively upfront. It doesn't financially burden the schools leaving. They're going to be able to use the money that they get out of the Big 12, which should be $18 million the first year, $19 million the second year as basically half shares, essentially, before becoming full share members with that new media contract in 2025. So everyone wins. I don't think this could have really done much better than it did.
Yeah, that was the other half of it. I want to look at this from the UCF perspective too. The Big 12 announced that, or at least there was some reporting out there that UCF will, and the other two will be getting half shares for the first 2 years. Is that right, Drew?
Correct, and that's the last 2 years of this old deal. And right. It's not unprecedented either, because TCU and West Virginia, when they joined, also got partial shares.
Yeah, this is the best deal we could have got without somebody feeling slighted. And I think the biggest part about all of this is people or entities or programs or conferences or whoever not feeling slighted at all. Opens the door for future out of conference scheduling. opportunities too, which shall be strangely relevant, I think, in the near future of this podcast.
We know UCF
we'll get
needs
there.
scheduling help.
We'll get there. But what I was going to say was the full share happens when that new media deal comes up. So I think that's really the next thing that we have to look for is what. I remember when we had Terry Malhajer on the show, I tried to get it out of him. I don't think he quite bit. Was what happens now with the new Big 12's media negotiations? What does that look like? Drew, you had it in your piece that the Big 12 announced $43 million payouts per school in the most recent cycle. Given that that looks like UCF will be getting somewhere between, you say, just using that as a figure, $18 to $20 million a year for those first 2 years. Big bump from the just under $8 million UCF received from the American last season. But now this is, it does fluctuate a little bit.
Those are low end figures. Those are low end. Those are figures on the low end. And I think it's the safest from a budgetary standpoint is to, take the conservative side. Both, because the Big 12 had a payout bump in 2020 to 21 versus, 2018-19, which was their last full year before COVID, was actually lower. But not every conference went up. The Big 10 had a little bump. The SEC had a little bit of a bump as far as on the negative side. This is the first year back from COVID, but this also is a combination of not just the media deal, but you also get other payouts, NCAA units from tournaments and all that other stuff. So
I think the bowl agreement too. I think that's another big one that I think we're gonna have to keep an eye on.
Right. Yeah. And the thing with the bowl agreement is it's not like the old system where, you had 7 bowl games, exactly which bowl games they were going to be. And this is what you got. This is what you got. Now there's a lot of jockeying for bowls. Things move around and stuff. And the payouts.
Well, it is more or less like that though, because the Big 12 does have its tie-in with the Sugar Bowl where they play the highest ranked SEC team that's not in the playoff.
And then it goes, then it opens up from there. And you see this more with the Group of 5 bowls, the ESPN-owned bowls, with this current cycle that we're on right now, where a lot of it is pooled. There's pooled stuff. And there's a lot of alternate agreements, more so than in prior bowl cycle contracts. And the bowl cycle contracts actually are going to be coming to a head very soon because the CFP is going to be ending. They all end together. And I know basically the head of the CFP basically told everyone, you got to get your act together. We got to get something working here. So this could be an opportunity for the Big 12. Plus or minus, hard to say, but I mean, something's got to give.
This is the other big one. I went back and looked at the archives here. If I see something else more updated on it, but the Big 12 and the SEC are still in the middle of a 12-year deal with ESPN for rights to the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. That pays $80 million a year through 2026.
That's the end of the cycle.
Yeah. So that's, once the TV agreement happens, then the bowl agreement has to be made with the conferences and whoever is going to be televising from there on. Let's see what there's
a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, while you're looking, Jeff, just so it can be said, and we can make this abundantly clear for anybody who's listening, there is no scenario that can be immediately seen as far as bowl scheduling and things like that involving UCF's entrance into the Big 12 come July 1st, 2023, where their bowl situation isn't improved, right? Whether it be Cincy or...
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, the drop between NY6 Bowl and, no offense to the Gasparilla, but like there are other bowls that are on dates that get more eyeballs and have a bigger draw overall on TV. Now, granted, UCF and Florida being involved, they were this past season, regardless of the outcome, pulled more eyeballs to it historically than ever before.
But it's a low-paying bowl.
But it shouldn't take a groundbreaking event every year to make have a bowl game be lucrative for you if you are a national power, as UCF is trying to be.
Yeah, I think that was one of the. Sorry, Drew, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and Kyle, you have a lot of expertise covering those Orlando Bowls. Camping World Bowl is a Big 12 affiliated bowl game.
It absolutely is, Drew Glukoff. It's very interesting you've mentioned that. Yeah.
I'm paying attention.
I've actually spoken to former Big 12 and now yet another example of soon-to-be current Big 12 coach Dana Holgerson. Anyways.
Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to add, and I know that you guys are going to be like, well, who gives a rip? But what does this mean for the what does this mean for the American going forward? Now that these three teams are gone, I think that obviously they take a step back, and I think they're neck to neck with the Sun Belt right now. There's the gap between the American and the Power Five, where the American had kind of clearly established itself as on the gradient between this. I tend to think there was more of a group of four, the American plus the Power Five. Now the American, I think, has taken a step back because of the loss of
so fast, my friend.
Well done, Corso.
Okay, Coach Corso, what do you want?
There are two frames of reference here. There's the on-field one, which you're exactly right on. And then there's the dollar figure one, which you're absolutely wrong about.
Okay?
Because the dollar figures aren't changing. It's been reported a couple of times, and it's been very quiet, that before things all turned upside down, that the American and ESPN kind of reworked things, and that's partially why they expanded the way they did, so that the payout remains the same.
The per team payout remains the same.
Per team payout
so ESPN is actually so what you're saying is ESPN is actually increasing its total annual payout to the American to accommodate the three additional schools. Is that right?
Correct. They get the inventory. And if you notice, none of those Sun Belt teams, ESPN property, were pulled in this expansion. They were all Conference USA teams, not an ESPN property. So now ESPN has more inventory within the FBS. They made it lucrative enough to the American to kind of hold things steady, because they could have blown the whole thing up. ESPN had that right, and they chose not to. But from that dollar figure standpoint, there's a gap between the American and everyone below them from a payout standpoint. The field product may be different, but you cannot deny that the dollars way favor the Americans still.
Hey, and that's
I will say, go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, that's ESPN paying for growth opportunity. We've had this conversation on this podcast about paying a little bit more for growing programs.
And let me add on to that. We're expecting the Big Ten to no longer be an ESPN product, and potentially the Big 12 could be out too with the SEC joining. So they need lower level product on board. So this actually helps ESPN, cover those midweek games, and you have MAC, Sun Belt, and American kind of closing that lower level with the SEC as the umbrella.
I will say, and I had mentioned this before to JP Gilbert and you, Drew, on Twitter, that the addition of those 6 teams does fall in line with the Americans' business model of taking those more metro area schools that are the second to third in line within their sort of region, right? And hoping and basically rolling the dice and the dice came up pretty well with UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, and Memphis, I should add, that you invest in those schools, give them the opportunity to strut their stuff on the national stage, and lo and behold, now I'm not saying that UTSA fans should book their CFP tickets just yet, but
there's an opportunity though.
But there's an opportunity there, and that's good. And that's good for those schools. And I think that, we at UCF should be proud of the fact that we were able to pave the way for where they were going. And speaking of the Sun Belt, one other thing that we wanted to talk about, of course, remember Terry Mohajir broke on our podcast that UCF men's soccer is expected to join the Sun Belt Conference for men's soccer only. That has not been officially announced yet. However, I would imagine that the next conference realignment news we're going to hear, at least from UCF, will be that being officially announced at some point. Exactly when, we don't know. But from things I've been hearing, both from the Sun Belt in particular, that they want to let sort of the ink dry on everything else. And, I would imagine obviously the date would be July 1, 2023, but again, it hasn't been, I'm always, you guys know me, I'm always paranoid. I'm like, I get nervous until it's officially announced, like when the press release comes out, I feel better about it. But obviously, 2023 or early 2023, UCF men's soccer ostensibly will be a member of the Sun Belt Conference.
But realignment does affect men's soccer this year. You have those old Conference USA teams that are planning on moving to the American.
3 of them.
Moving a year early. So UCF's going to be affected. The FIU. I'm trying to remember the other ones off the top. I think UAB and one of the other schools. I don't have it in front of me.
I think it was Charlotte. I'll double check. But
they're coming 2022 into the American. So during UCF Swan Song, men's soccer will have a change. Even though things are planned for the future is also now, and it's going to impact UCF this fall.
Yeah, and by the way, that addition, by the way, is a big step up for the for UCF men's soccer in what will be their final year in the American. I just want to double check and make sure that I have the right schools here. It's going to be UAB, FAU, and UAB, FAU, and looks like
I believe FIU as well.
No, FIU. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry about that. It's going to be UAB, FIU, FAU, and Charlotte.
Yeah, and FIU will be an affiliate going forward. Obviously, the other 3 will be affiliates this year, full members next year. But expect to play a few more Florida schools this coming year for men's soccer.
Yeah, and that's good. That's good for soccer in the Sunshine State. I think that's that's going to be key for both of these teams going forward. And I should mention James Madison in FIU. Now I've got it right, I think.
Well, James Madison is going to the Sun Belt.
Oh, that's right. Yep. Gosh, what in the world are they? Okay.
But
yeah, okay. But they're joining in women's lacrosse. That's right.
It's good that you mentioned, James Madison, those schools. The Sun Belt, which is now they've expanded on their members, is basically taking over the other half of CUSA for men's soccer. That's going to be a really good conference to go into. That's really, you got the actual Sun Belt schools, and then you have all the displaced Power Fives, the Kentuckys, the South Carolinas, the West Virginias, and then soon to be UCFs. Yeah. So you got all the displaced Power Fives that their conferences just don't have enough to support their own that sport. They all find a home in the Sun Belt. So I'm sorry, Joe, I should clarify again. Jet lag is a hell of a thing, guys. I'm telling you. Charlotte, FIU, FAU, and UAB are the 4 teams that are joining in 2022. Jeff, you're okay. I flew on the 6 a.m. red eye. I've been awake since about 3 a.m. So I feel you.
Don't compare this to a 6-hour time difference. Wrong with you?
No. You didn't. You moved. Yeah, you barely moved a time zone. I'm coming off of a
barely
48
time zone. I didn't move a time zone.
A 4,800 mile, 9 hour, 6 times. I flew a quarter of the way around the world in 9 hours. So I don't want to hear it.
My arm's tired.
Yeah. That is a Kyle Nash worthy dad joke.
I have never sunk to that low level. That is a grandfather joke. Okay, let's
all right. So that's the story right now. 2023, July the 1st, UCF joins the big. You remember when we were kids and like 2023 seemed like it was like you'll be so old when that happens, 2000. Right? Yeah. And now here it is, and UCF is going to be in the Big 12 conference in 2023.
I remember playing, NCAA 2003, and you can like move teams around conferences based on how well they do. And Yeah,
because of course you can just throw conferences all over the place in a video game. No one cares about television contracts.
What happened, and basically everything got tossed.
Hey, let's put UCF in the Pac-12 and see how that goes. Anyway,
stranger things have happened. Rutgers in the Big Ten. Has anyone ever failed up as well as Rutgers?
I don't know, man. I've got Maryland.
Well, at least Maryland's done something. They at least been to a BCS bowl.
Yeah. Speaking of failing up, when we return on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast, Drew and I will be refereed by one Mr. Nash, talking about our little dueling columns we had this week. Why I am sad that the war on I-4 is ending in football, and why Drew thinks I'm stupid. God,
we don't have enough time for this segment.
And the public reaction to it. We'll talk about that, and we'll spin that forward to what does UCF's football future in the Big 12 now really look like? Lay out the lay of the land. Who's going to be the marquee regular season game that we look forward to every year? Stick around. We'll be right back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
We are back here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Andrew Glukov, and Kyle Nash joining me here. A little late breaking news that Lopez just dropped on us in his absence. From Brian Fisher, a few updates from the NCAA Division I Council. The 21st century model, which we've talked about on this podcast with head coach Scott Calabrese of UCF, that has been tabled once again by the NCAA Council. That's the thing where they're trying to make men's soccer a 2-semester sport, kind of like golf and tennis. That's been tabled again, unfortunately. It looked like it, and from what I understand from people who I've talked to in the world of college men's soccer, all the stars had aligned for it to happen in early 2020, and then COVID happened. And the constellation has been thrown into chaos again. So it's still tabled. I think eventually it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, not if. Also, volleyball moves to limit itself to 32 matches. There are also standardized medical hardship waivers, and men's wrestling minimum financial aid / season of competition changes. That's according to Brian Fisher. The wrestling, he's with Athlon Sports, by the way, but nobody aside from Eric Lopez cares about college wrestling.
There is no NCAA college wrestling in the state of Florida.
Correct. Who was the last school to have it? Do you know? Do you remember?
I believe it was Stetson.
I thought so. I seem to remember, yes, Stetson might have had it.
But that was decades ago.
Yeah, that was before our time. Speaking of before our time, let's talk about the thing that people on our Twitter feeds have been talking about. I released a column on Tuesday, Requiem for a Rivalry, the war on I-4. I've been working on this for a few weeks. And my main thrust was this, that, with UCF joining the Big 12 in 2023, we are heading for the final year of the war on I-4 in football. Not in all sports. I mean, it's pretty, it's basically a foregone conclusion that we're going to play USF in non-conference games in sports other than football. But football is the crown jewel. And since 2013, they have been our primary rival. They're a geographic rival. We got a trophy game and everything. And that's going to go away after this year. And I wrote a column stating that, I thought this is one of the sad things about conference realignment is we're losing this rivalry that has all the things that a great rivalry has. And I kind of listed them off as proximity, condescension, drama, politics, Lord Almighty, the pettiness. I mean, it has a, and it's funny. Like I put this up, and my main thesis was, hey, this rivalry has been so fun, right? I think, and so filled with that stuff, that stew that makes great rivalries. It's the stuff that made Auburn and Alabama not play for 25 years over $34. It's Drew, you would recognize this. Woody Hayes running out of gas as he's driving out of the state of Michigan after visiting a recruit, but he's still in Michigan, like just across the Ohio border. And instead of filling up his car within the borders of the state of Michigan, he pushes his car across the state border to Ohio and fills it up there. Like it's that kind of thing. And my thought was, hey, you know something? We are in the position now that they were in 15 years ago, kind of talking down to us and playing the finite game, saying that they had won, it's over. We played the infinite game, stepped up our game to respond to them, and look where we are now. And now it seems like the tables have turned a little bit. USF is starting to play the infinite game. They're moving on the on-campus stadium. The IPF is underway. They know that they have been had by us. And now they're trying to get on the last, what they think might be the last possible train of conference expansion if there's additional expansion within the Big 12, which, I think there's a non-zero chance of that happening. And I'm pretty sure you two guys believe that too. So my thought was, look, if they get it together, we could have the upper hand permanently on them. And you say, look, if the Big 12 decides to expand by 2 or 4, instead of doing what they did with us in the Big East and blocking us, right, which turned out to be a stupid decision, why not do the right thing, show them how it's really done, and have the permanent upper hand, vote for them? If, again, assuming they get all their stuff together, the on-campus stadium and all that, and say, you know something? We'll always have the upper hand over you because you wouldn't be here without us because we did the right thing. And man, have I gotten pushback on Twitter from this. Wow.
Well, I mean,
but here's the thing. I want to make this point because Drew, I want you to talk about your comment today. But here's the thing about that. All the response I've gotten from that, to me, only proves my point.
Knew you were going to,
which is this rivalry. You guys hate that. We hate them so much that it's so personal that everyone's like, no way, let them die. Let them rot on the vine with FAU and with FAU in the American. They should be an FCS school for all year. And guys, look, first of all, that's not going to happen. Second of all, they are higher up in the pecking order of institutions right now. I think they are now one of the premier institutions within the American. I really do believe that right now with us now out of the way. Okay. And but that response, that emotional response is exactly what I'm talking about. It's exactly what we're getting. It's exactly what we get with them and nobody else. We're not going to get it with Houston. We're not going to get it with Cincinnati. We're not going to get it with West Virginia. We're not going to get it with Texas Tech. We're not going to get it with anyone else.
Well,
you're exaggerating a little bit. There hasn't been.
Oh, really? Do you want to read my mentions?
No. He's right. No, they're all up on him. He's right about.
Well,
it. I won't give him.
And a lot of them had said this. We won't block them. We won't advocate for them.
That's fair.
And when that's my thought process. Here's the big well, there's a few differences here between what happened, in 2003 with the original Big East expansion, and then the cliff,
and then 2010,
USF
7 years later,
and Judy Genshaft drove the Big East off of. The big thing here is when USF joined the Big East, they became complacent, and UCF kind of started, got, as I said in the article, dare I say, bullish on moving forward on their facilities.
Yeah.
That hasn't stopped.
By the way, Jeff, that's the one you're looking for.
Yeah, that hasn't stopped. This is a big difference. UCF's not showing complacency. They are still very aggressive with a very detailed plan of how they want to become near the top of the Big East. They're of the Big 12. USF was happy to be there. UCF and their administration obviously is not just happy to be there, and I think that's a quick point
of order. Quick point of order on that, and I'll let you get back. Now, you make a good point about complacency, because there was a point in time when UCF was complacent. We know when that was, and it was
that led to this whole thing in the first place.
And it was in the late 90s. Remember, Drew? Remember when Steve Sloan, right? When he said that, when Conference USA was being formed, right? They wanted UCF in 1997, and he said, no, we want to hold out for an invite to the ACC or the Big East. Everyone knew that was not going to happen. And what happened? When the Great Midwest and the Metro Conference merged and became Conference USA,
UCF
they took
got left
South
out.
Florida, and UCF got left out. And that was the spark, I think, that started lighting a fire under UCF's behind.
Well, the other thing with that is UCF's always been a step behind. When UCF ended up in the Sun Belt after their 1 year when the American South merged, was right after USF left for the Metro. So they were always one step behind. And, USF goes to Conference USA, UCF goes to the TAC, then goes to Conference USA. So they were always behind.
Mm-hmm. We were in the MAC. They were in Conference USA. We were in Conference USA. They were in the Big East.
Correct. There was always a step behind there, and that was one reason why they had more success in all sports for the most part early on. And a lot of those series are still in favor of South Florida because of that. They were just always a step ahead from an affiliation standpoint, and it makes a difference. You bring in better caliber athletes. We know the Transatlantic / Atlantic Sun at the time was a very low major, one of the bottom of the barrel Division I conferences. And I got to give the ASUN a lot of credit. They have redefined themselves and have really pushed themselves as far as respectability in the Division I pecking order as they grow into football and other stuff. But that's neither here nor there. That was long after UCF left. So, now that they got on par, the complacency that USF always had from being a step ahead came back to haunt them. It was a momentum thing. And the momentum has taken UCF up and beyond. It comes back to resume. UCF has built a very good resume. The football success in 2013, 2017, and 2018 cannot be denied. They have won. They and Houston are tied for the most conference championships total in the American in its history since 2013. USF, I believe, is tied for third with Tulsa.
Tulsa.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that resume, it's been earned. It's a little bit different than what happened in 2003. 2003, Miami and Virginia Tech were leaving the ACC, or for the ACC. There was a lot of chaos. So they were looking at new schools. Louisville and Cincinnati were the two. And then they had UCF as a possible football only until Boston College left. That took UCF out of contention. USF got brought in as an all sports because UCF's facilities are absolutely terrible. We all know.
And by the way, it was Judy Genshaft who did that again too. By the way, in 2000, I think a lot of people forget that there was an a football only invite that was being heavily discussed in 2003, and she put the kibosh on that one too. Everyone remembers 2010. Nobody remembers 2003. The only one that I get. And I'm sorry for diverting a little bit here, Drew, but I wanted to know what you thought on this. The only one thing I don't remember was what the other sports would have done if that went through.
Well,
because the Big East wouldn't have been cool with us staying in the ASUN, so.
Well, it never got to that point. It was shortly after that UCF got the Conference USA invite.
Right.
So
for all sports.
Point, yeah, for all sports. So at this point, UCF's still in the MAC for football. They're still in the ASUN for other sports. There was no talk of really going anywhere else yet because it was so early in the process. UCF got shut out well before the final votes. Once Boston College made the move, that was it. I mean, it was game over at this point. So, you know, they got their
why was Boston College the key to that?
Well, because originally it was only 2 schools moving. So you replaced you had the 18 conference and you replaced them with Louisville and Cincinnati. They were locks. And then you looked at the 9th school, which would be great for scheduling, you know, with a football only. That solves your football scheduling issues. You can have the 8 conference games. Big East, remember, only had 7 conference games at the time. So when Boston College left, now you need a third all-sport member to balance the leagues again. You know, because as you know, the Big East was a hybrid.
That's right.
At half,
that's right.
You know, one side, half the other. You know, from a football, non-football standpoint, you had to keep it balanced. And losing Boston College threw that balance off. That's when USF was able to be in because UCF's facilities were so bad. I mean, as we know, the old arena, and we all have experience with it, was nothing more than a glorified high school gymnasium. And I wrote in the article, you can legitimately yell from one side to the other and be heard perfectly clear. We've all done it.
You and I may have done that at one point, Drew. Yeah, I was about to say.
We've all done it. I remember Kyle when Weasel went on the other side to do something, and I'm yelling back and forth with him. But I mean, that's not Division I caliber. I mean, that arena wasn't even Division I caliber when it was built. I mean, it was a joke. It was an absolute joke. And no respectable conference like the Big East or any of them were ever going to take UCF for facilities like that. So it took an investment. It took a vision. You know, Steve Orsini had a great vision on building this stuff up, and got to give him a lot of credit for getting this thing rolling. You know, the football side, George O'Leary played a major role in getting the stadium going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're reaping the benefits of it. You know, hindsight's 20/20.
Don't forget the Arena Convocation Center. You know, that was big.
Yeah. Oh, it was all, you know, the athletic village, all that, you know, it was all intertwined. It was all part of this, of a similar package of stuff. And, you know, without those, you know, those guys with vision, you know, we won't be enjoying this now. You know, I remember there was a hot discussion about, you know, George O'Leary and stuff, but, you know, we have to remember, no George O'Leary, no stadium. That pretty cut and dry there. I mean, he was a driving force, and that redefined not only football, that refined athletics altogether.
The whole campus. It really redefined the whole campus. Yeah, and I will say, you know, that's, you know, I mean, I've been pretty vocal about my complicated relationship to the George O'Leary era.
It'll always be complicated.
It will always be complicated. But the thing, you know, and I'm not saying that he's the only person who could have made that happen. If somebody else was, you know, was a visionary, they probably could have made, they would have been the captain of that ship as well. But he was there. He helped make the push. He deserves credit for it.
He does. And not only that, but it also redefined UCF's academics on an athletic level.
True.
He was the guy who pushed student athlete, and the other sports followed. I mean, football was starting to set a pace with all these. Absolutely right. With all these team averages over 3, which in football is, you know, very, very unusual. Usually it's much lower. But you're seeing this, and then the other sports start picking up their numbers. If you remember, they were talking about it when UCF went to the first Fiesta Bowl, the 2014 Fiesta Bowl. They talked about the APR at the time, and UCF had the highest APR of the teams in the BCS bowls. You're talking about big schools. So I mean, you know, it all kind of builds up at one on another. And, you know, to bring it back to the whole thing with South Florida, you know, that buildup didn't necessarily have to do with South Florida. You know, UCF played them 4 times. The first time they played them was in 2005. The stadium was already coming. You know, it was already in the works. So it wasn't so much, you know, USF that helped spur it. It was the fact that UCF was told that they would have to be somewhere else when they renovated the Citrus Bowl. That didn't happen for another decade. But UCF was okay in the MAC and Conference USA. They had very strong rivalry with Marshall. A lot of people, and it's not meant to be a dig, but a lot of people weren't there in those games in Huntington, West Virginia. I was, and I've been to a number of places, and I remember it was Kyle and I were both in the UCF marching band.
Far-flung places such as Huntington, West Virginia.
Well, we were both in the band. We were both in the band in 2002, and you remember they hammed the living daylights out of that matchup. The Huntington.
I remember the intro with Dante Culpepper and Randy Moss.
Oh yeah,
on the ESPN.
I found the game. I put it online last year. But the fans were so full of hostility. They were afraid that there was going to be violence. They had to have when we were walking on the field.
Seems hilarious.
They had all the female members of the band on the inside towards the field, and all the males on the outside, just in case, because they were like, these guys are absolute animals. We don't know what they're going to do, and we're afraid of what they're going to do. Now, granted, they didn't do anything to us. There was other incidents elsewhere in the stadium. They didn't do anything to us. But the only other time in my life and the experiences that I've dealt with that I've ever seen that had to be done with a marching band was with my sister, who was in Alabama, went to Tennessee. I mean, and they had to have extra security.
Yep.
So, I mean, I never, it was my last year in the band when we went to play USF in 2005. And there was a lot of buzz in that game because it was the first game ever, but never once did I ever feel that kind of hostility that I felt at Marshall in 2002.
Well, I mean, at Raymond James, there's so much more empty space too. So, there
was a good turnout that game. I think there was like 50,000 people that first one. I mean, it was
compared to Marshall's stadium. I mean,
Joan Edwards is a little more intimate.
Correct.
And it was AstroTurf. It was this very thin, maybe inch layer of carpet on top of concrete.
It was a carpet. It was a carpet.
It was awful.
Yeah, but the thing is about USF is it's not a manufactured rivalry like the Marshall thing was. It's not a manufactured rivalry like UConn was. Was USF the only factor in driving UCF toward the heights that it's now achieved? No, but you better believe it was a big factor. Because I think our fan base and our administration and our donors looked at them and said, they're eating our lunch. We got to, we're just as good an athletic program as they can be. We just deserve the chance. And go ahead, Drew.
I agree with that. You got to also consider like this. The reason why USF is also the factor it is. I think Drew alluded to it, but I'm going to put it on a bigger scale. This is the two schools fighting to be the fourth in the state, right? Because they're the other at the time, at least we're talking this early 2000s, late 90s.
Remember when South Florida beat Florida State in Tallahassee and they came out with the billboard that says, "Welcome to the Big Four"?
Yeah. How'd that work out?
Yeah. How'd that work out? Right.
Right. Exactly. Right. And that's the whole concept there too, is you got these two entities that are biting at a trough that is already rather competitive. And you guys have both made plenty of colorful points as to how you say they're what's his word? Intentionally keeping down of the Knights program. And going far enough back, it would have been correct to call it the Golden Knights program even. But I digress. The punchline is this. And here's the best thing I like about your approach, Jeff, and I'll just say it out loud. I know you're here for the petty, and everybody's trying to do Kirk from Star Trek and doing the, they're talking to Captain Kirk about the Klingons in Star Trek 6. Jim, they could die. Let them die. Right? That whole thing. But you're going a lot more Game of Thrones on it. And I want to throw this conspiracy concept to you. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying all the stars will align as we're talking about.
Where's this going? All right.
But and a bit of my personal experience, the only article I wrote where I got so far about UCF where I got the vitriol you did, and Drew can witness this because at the time I believe we were co-writers at the same site. I wrote the concept about, hey, if this stuff keeps going on, I believe this was shortly after the 2018 Memphis win, where Mackenzie Milton went inverted to score a touchdown running the football.
The regular season game.
Correct. Very good.
Right. Okay.
The 1-point victory, if you will.
Yeah.
It's so hard to keep track of them with how many times poor Mike Norman.
I call it the Taj McGowan game, but anyway, go ahead.
That's also completely fair, my good friend.
It was actually a very sloppy game.
Whatever. Let Kyle finish his point.
A true statement nonetheless. But so after that game, I wrote a piece about, hey, with all that's going on with Memphis and all that happened in the past year, and it's looking like they're going to battle again for the conference championship as they did eventually in 2018, the 2018 season, I should say. I wrote an article hinting that maybe one day Memphis could possibly maybe be a rival, and here's why I think so. Oh, boy, did they let loose. What are you thinking? That could never be a rivalry. Durka, rah, all this other stuff.
Oh, yeah,
well, let's not forget at the time, Kyle, what Memphis UCF had beaten Memphis, 13 times in a row?
13. When I had pinned that article, I think it was only 11. Relax.
It was still a lot,
Correct.
And recently got broken, but anyway.
And to say it, something you have said, I mentioned that in the article. So
yes.
But from the standpoint of the history that's being built here, and when they do eventually get that win, I didn't think it would take as long as it did, granted, but what do I know? The whole concept being that this sets the table for a very excellent rivalry that could spawn, and USF will forever and all this.
Yeah.
Talking about all the situation for one, and I'm gonna you'll answer this too. The main reason I'm doing this because I want you to answer two questions, and one of them will be posed here. For one, I don't know about USF's solvency fiscally. You say you're going to get their crap together. You're going to cover some of that soon. I surely hope. But what if when the vote comes along, and assuming USF does what anybody claims, or what you're claiming here is possible, that they somehow come to health to truly be Power 5 worthy. Let's say all that happens, regardless about how any of us feel. And
they build the IPF, they build the on-campus stadium. Okay, go ahead.
They win a game or two. Better than what they've done.
Or three.
Compete in the American, go ahead.
Right. Nationally ranked, all that. And there's a situation where you could get USF or Memphis. Should USF or UCF vote for Memphis to bring them in and stave off USF that way? Does it get any more petty and delicious than that? That's my question.
Oh, does it get any petty? No, it does not get any more petty than that. Now, if they're the one who hand me the card and say, write Memphis or write USF, which one we go for? You know what I'm taking? I'm taking USF.
Yeah, I knew you would. As
I take the best program.
Well, right, and again,
but Kyle makes a good point, which is all things being equal, which right now we freely acknowledge they're not.
Well,
all things being equal,
they're never going to be equal, though. There's always going to be balance, differences.
But
if Memphis, renovates the Liberty Bowl, which is incredible plans, let's see if they come to fruition. If South Florida builds their on-campus stadium, I think that's pretty neck and neck. If South Florida, well, I shouldn't say that. Memphis still has the upper hand because of men's basketball.
Well, and that's what I'm looking at. It's not just football. Yeah. Football, drives the gravy train.
But it kind of is.
More than that, though.
It kind of is, because if it wasn't, our case for the Big 12 would be weaker than it is, or than it was when we finally got the invite. I mean, because the Big 12 is not inviting us. The Big 12 is not inviting us because of how great our basketball program is. As much as I love UCF basketball,
Geography matters
the
too.
reason.
That's why USF got the invite in 2003. They had geography. They basically failed into it because they didn't.
Well, they also had number one, a better arena in the Sun Dome.
They had facilities.
And number two, that, even though UCF and USF were both playing off campus, South Florida's off campus stadium was better.
Oh yeah, I mean they have Raymond James Stadium.
Yeah,
which
Thank you for setting the table, Drew. We've been over the history and how much they're getting fleeced and rent to go to Ray J to play to a stadium of which they cannot even fill the lower bowl by any stretch of the imagination.
No, and we know from our own experience, Kyle, that switching to on campus is a game changer. I mean, you and we have experience being on the field with 10,000 fans in the stands of a giant cavern of a stadium.
Well, I mean, in more than one instance, but here's the question that I have. You've seen where I think you and a lot of people differ is you seem very secure in the prospect of future USF fiscal solvency. Can you bring me there?
Well, I mean, they're talking about building a 200.
Got mistaken for Eric Lopez. Now you want the other host?
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about building a $200 million stadium. This would have worked 10 years ago when they were enjoying a $10 million payout annually by the Big East versus they barely got just under 8 this year for UCF, and USF was actually like 7.6, 7.7 million if I'm correct. Jeff, it was a little bit lower, just because of whatever the skew of winning. But either way, they have less money coming in, and the prospects are a lot lower. They're not playing Louisville and Cincinnati and those guys. They're not getting the home and homes against Miami anymore. It's being viewed differently. They're being viewed as a second-class citizen, just like the rest of the G5. They're getting 2-1s now with the Floridas and the Alabamas of the world as a way of trying to get people in, because right now as you said, Kyle, they got to pay rent. They only get money on the gate. That's why they got to get the 2-1s with Alabama, so they can get that and get that home game with Florida, so they can get that huge gate. UCF actually doesn't benefit as well because they don't have the extra seats to fill. I mean, you look at UCF's turnout, it's usually 39,000 and up, and it fluctuates. It fluctuates a bit, as expected, because you have visiting seats and whatnot. But it's usually in the 39s all the way up to the max at 40 in the 44s, and on very rare occasions a little bit higher. So the needs of the two schools are different. USF's plan, it was just mentioned, written in the Tampa Tribune, 35,000 seats is what's looking to be built. Possibility of expansion beyond that. I mean, times and situations have changed. Costs are higher. There's less you can do, but as we all know, getting on campus is that first step to redefining a program.
I think that it comes down to this.
And thank you.
It depends.
The question that was posed to you in the first place, Jeff. Thank you.
I think that it all comes down from UCF's perspective, how you perceive South Florida's future right now. If you perceive it as flat or going down, there's absolutely no reason to think that they would be that it would be worth discussing them anymore, right? Now, I caution that I think that's dangerous because they're not going to suck forever, okay? And there's a level of complacency, like you talked about, Drew, that as a fan, I just feel really uncomfortable with, because I remember when we were kind of in that position. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other hand, there are a select few of us, and shout out to that select few who dropped into my mentions and said, actually, we agree, that who view this as a potential spark underneath USF's behind to say, hey, we got to get our stuff together. And you know what? That means going all in on the on-campus stadium. Then let's go. Let's do it. Let's gather the funds. Let's build it. That doesn't necessarily mean that that it is very much going to happen. But you know something? Last year, there were no plans to do it. And they kept talking about how we don't plan to do it. And their AD was out there with a massive campaign stating why it's great to play at Rage at USF, right? You're playing in an NFL stadium. What a sales pitch that turned out to be, huh? Fantastic job. How the tables have turned all of a sudden with UCF getting their Big 12 invite. Now all of a sudden it's, we need an on-campus stadium right now, right? So, do you give them the benefit of the doubt or not? I think that a lot of UCF fans' motivations are that there's motivated reasoning happening there, and I get it. I totally get it, man.
Pettiness, I got this.
It comes down to this. It needs to be earned, especially from the older fans who were there in 2003 and know that UCF or USF failed up into the Big East. They didn't actually earn anything. They were in the right place at the right time with the right situation. It wasn't earned.
I think it's a little harsh to say failed up.
They failed up.
At the very least,
you had a good independent season in 2002, and that was it.
The Big East, the Big East bought low, hoping they could sell high. I think that's what happened, and the stock did not appreciate to the extent that they were thinking.
Give Drew this
the right place, right time
to what UCF did at the very least, right? I mean, I think that's what he's getting at.
Yeah, okay.
and it needs to be earned. UCF's built the resume. They've earned what they got. Just because you want the rivalry in the football series, because you're going to be playing in every other sport, is not a reason to bring them into the conference. You need to bring them if they earn their way, if they build the stadium, they build the resume, they win some conference championships, they do something, because they've done nothing in their history from that standpoint. Then you can welcome the conversation of, are they worthy of a spot? At this point, the answer is a very hard no.
You're right about that.
It's because here's the key. At this juncture, UCF does not need South Florida in football. They don't. It's a want. Fans want it. They like it, but they don't need it. UCF survived without it for many years and did okay. And they'll do okay going forward. They have they got some other things to worry about with the new conference and building themselves up there. Because it's, let's be honest, there's going to be some growing pains going into this conference. It's going to happen. Yes. Let's not delude ourselves. So that's where my take.
If not in football, and certainly in some other sports, I think you're right about that.
South Florida for football is a want. It's not a need. UCF does not need South Florida at this point.
Go ahead, Kyle.
So as the mediator between this hated Twitter situation, this catastrophe, this conflict, this counterpoint that you gentlemen have created here.
You're such a hyperbolist. God.
I am the harbinger of the hyperbole. At least give me some damn alliteration, Jeff. I thought you were a professional. No.
I hate alliteration, and I wish it would die.
That's the joke. No, but here, listen, all the silliness that you've come to know and love from me aside, and I say this with all the respect as the guy who got me, in here at the Black and Gold, all you guys bringing me in and all of that. There's a reason why I went with Worf with the, if you were any other man, I would kill you when you first dropped this opinion. Okay. However, here's the thing. I generally speaking, of course, I agree with Drew, but darn it, as much as I am on the what are you thinking train, what I love about your plan, Jeff, is you plan for success. Even if it involves the success of somebody else who people may not necessarily want to see it happen. Should USF pull off all this brilliance and prove me and Drew and all the other people wrong and get to the heights that are thoroughly possible and get themselves in a situation where they can climb back in, UCF, from a fiscal standpoint, is absolutely foolish to not vote as part of the committee that may have a vote to let them in. I'm not saying throw them a lifeline And I don't think you really are either. You're saying, listen, if they do their due diligence and they can come back in and be the one thing they're good for, revenue, and darn it, bring them back in, because at the end of the day, that's what's running this train in this constantly changing landscape of college sport. Point.
Yeah, it would be a good business decision.
Absolutely.
Well, and
It would
again,
be a good business decision for the state of Florida. It would be a
you're
good
guessing
business
now.
decision for UCF and the gate. It would be a good business decision, by the way, in terms of travel, not just for UCF, but also for the rest of the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, it's all a guessing game. You can
it's all the reasons why we should have gotten into Conference USA, at least alongside them, if not instead of them.
And you wrote a story
their
about
administration did the wrong thing.
And you wrote a whole what if about that, which kind of got all grandiose. But I mean,
the whole point.
I mean, here's the thing.
Drew, didn't you hear?
Yeah. Here's the thing. If I win the lottery, I'll get money. But you can't project like that. You need.
Sure, I don't know your gambling debts.
Hey, it's all to have with money. It's all.
Why are you back in Cleveland again?
Or a loan shark? No.
There's a guy.
Sounds like you need
I was never big. I was never a big gambler.
Guardian.
Nice jersey closet you got there, Drew. Be a shame if something happened to it.
Oh no, that's awful.
Oh no. Look at him. He's like, man, I want to take some of those for myself.
That's terrible.
It'd be such a shame if the spark of life is taken away from you in a blaze of glory.
All right, I got. Well, go ahead and finish your point, and then I got one last question. We're gonna wrap it.
Okay. So I mean, basically on your side, it's about guessing the market. What's going to happen with this future investment. So, you sure, it sounds great on paper, but in the end, you need results. If you don't have results, these conversations don't matter. So, we can go all pie in the sky. Oh, this happens. No. Let things start to fall.
As Eric Lopez says, let things play out.
Yeah, let it play out. Then you come start having a conversation. There's because you don't want to create an expectation of what a school need to do, because you're only going to set yourself up for disappointment. We've seen it. After UCF,
are we kind of already doing that with aren't they already doing that with their on-campus stadium now? They're looking at us and being like, actually, that's a good idea.
Well, I mean, it only took them how many years to realize that, maybe they're onto something. But again, tangible results. The resume's been built. They've seen what it can do for them. It just the conference invite was the final straw. That was what just broke them. That fan base broke like a twig. I mean, it was beautiful.
I think desperation is the mother of motivation. That's
correct.
It really is. But so my always view is, you don't block them. Don't stoop to the level that Junie Genshaft did with UCF, and has been proven backed up by multiple writers who are unaffiliated with each other, all said the same thing. Yeah, she was the problem. So you don't block them. However, you don't have to advocate for them. If next year they decide, everyone's growing to 14, we're going to go to 14. Next year,
right?
You're not going to go to bat and say, "Oh, well, USF's a great option." Look, because we have a rivalry game. No, you have to look on what's actually there. So when the time comes, if they've got the resume and they're the best candidate, then you let it ride.
Or one of the two or four best candidates.
Yeah. But if they're not, which they're currently not, I'll go on that. There are schools that are better candidates at this point.
Yeah, I can't deny that.
You don't push for them. You don't advocate for them, because it is not about what's best for UCF. It is what's best for the Big 12. Right. That's what it needs to come down to.
Last question before we. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's why. I take the stance that UCF's moving on to greener pastures. If USF brings their quality up, okay. They've got the rest of the decade to work on it.
Yeah. Last question, then we're going to move on from this. Looking forward at the Big 12, 2023. Who comes the closest right now to producing that as I mentioned in the column, what Ernie Grunfeld called the juice? Who brings the juice to the building? Is it Houston? Is it Cincinnati? Could it be someone else like West Virginia? We played them before. Is it anyone?
On the surface, in the short term, people are going to say Cincinnati because of these hard-fought football games. I actually think Houston is a better all-around package.
Agreed.
I agree with that. And by the way, it's and the gauge that I use is, say we're good and they stink. Which team is going to still draw people? Like South Florida still draws people when they were terrible and they raised their game. Like Cincinnati, I still think back to that game that we played up in Cincinnati where Cincinnati stunk during our undefeated year, where I think 500 people were in the stands. We scored 53 points in 3 quarters. And it was so bad that Cincinnati was like, when the Reigns came, Cincinnati was like, we've had enough.
Yeah, they called the game after 3 quarters.
They called the game
I have that game, by the way. I've always been a proponent of Houston. Aside from just being on the other side of the Gulf, there are similarities to the schools, both obviously the metropolitan aspect, the space aspect,
heavy ties to the space program. That's right.
There's similarities there, and the
powder
fact
blue.
That
no, wait, sorry.
People forget 2005. 2013, 2014, there were some really outstanding football games between
2009,
UCF
our first 2009, the first time we ever beat a ranked opponent
was Houston.
It was Houston. It was Case Keenum and the Houston Cougars. That's right.
That was homecoming at the then Bright House Network Stadium. So Cincinnati's kind of more of a Johnny come lately, because I mean UCF's been playing Houston since UCF joined Conference USA in 2005. There's a little more history there, and then there was the college game day basketball in Houston when Houston was a top 10 team, and UCF upset them on national television.
I forgot.
That's a good one.
There's stuff there. And I think a little bit of cultivation, and people are kind of hooked on Cincinnati just because Cincinnati's been the hot thing, but they weren't always the hot thing. And I think Houston can be the all-around package of it. They just have to you just have to cultivate it naturally. Just let it ride.
All-time series UCF 7, Houston 3.
And some of those games were really close.
Some of those games were tight. Well, 31-29 in 05, 5-point game in 09, 7-point game in 10, 5-point game in 13, 5-point game in 14, 7-point game in 16. Remember the Brandon Alexander game?
Yeah, and that you had
knocked the ball out of Greg Ward's hand at the 1-yard line.
2014. Yep. It got hit the 1-yard line, went out the end zone, touchback, UCF wins. There was the deflection on the pass on 4th down in 2013 that allowed the miracle season,
right?
Saved the season, and allowed that BCS bowl game to happen. I mean, that game right down to the wire. And that 2005 game, I'm trying to remember who the coach was. I think it was Art Briles at the time.
It was Art Briles, yeah, that's right.
And commented on how good a crowd and how good of an atmosphere UCF brought, because the game was in Orlando at the Citrus Bowl, and that helped make a difference in that game. Because 2005, this was when UCF made the big turnaround from 0-11 to 8-5, winning the.
That was when we beat Kevin Cobb. Remember Kevin Cobb?
Yeah, won the CUSA East, and went to their first ever bowl game. You lose against Houston, you may not. I don't think you win CUSA East at that point, and that season kind of loses its special meaning at that point. So I mean, there's been some really epic games, close games against Houston. Cincinnati, you have the blowout, you have the game day game, you have the close.
That's
loss,
about it,
and that's really about it.
Yeah, that's true.
There's not much else.
I don't know. I just, my last word on this is, I get the vitriol, and and the pettiness. And I'm like, I'm like, what's his name in the new Star Wars, in that one Star Wars movie, the more late, where I'm like, more, shows how much I know about Star Wars. But I just, and I put up a thread earlier. I was, I grew up, the first college football game I ever watched was 91, Florida State, Miami, the first wide right game. The day I fell in love with college football was the same two teams a year later in the Orange Bowl. And just, you could feel through the television, just the intensity of that game. And for me, as a fan, as someone who's been a fan of UCF since I came here, there's just nobody else who can replicate that. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope that eventually we do find that with someone. The jury's out. And until that happens, that's the, that for me is that's our holy war. That's our trophy game. That's our marquee game. That's the game where it's like, if we lose this game, the whole season is a failure. And
well, I don't even think the Holy War views that anymore, because Utah still goes to the Rose Bowl if they win the conference.
Either way, I just I'm going to miss that feeling.
You and many, my brother. Hey, listen, whether you're donning a red lightsaber like Kylo Ren or not, by the way, you got a haircut too recent for that conversation. But yeah, I think none of us want to see the game go away, but I mean, hey, listen, it could be another 10 years when that hair of yours is looking a bit more gray, more white, even depending on how many years go by. And you're like, boy, I'm sure glad. There you go. I'm sure glad he got those Bulls, because this dang space game.
I'm just waiting for all I know, people. All I know, UCF Twitter Mafia, is this. After our first few years in the Big 12, all right, someone somewhere is going to come out and say, man, we've had some great games in the Big 12, but I don't know. There's just something missing from some of these teams. There's some intensity missing. I don't know who it was. It's not like it was when we played USF.
That could happen too, man. I won't doubt that.
And you know what? When one of you is going to do it, and when you do, I'm going to smash that retweet button.
No, but he's going to
so hard.
He's going to be there waiting. And he's going to wait in bated breath. He is going to sit in that chair and wait until that moment comes.
One guy said, he replied to me, he's like, Cincinnati's just fine. And I'm like, dude, just fine is not good enough for a rival game.
I'll agree.
Cincinnati's too new.
I'm not looking for just fine.
Cincinnati's too new.
I still need to see how they'll do without their quarterback, all their top defensive players, and all of that.
By the way, here's my real last question. I know, and Drew, I know you got to go. If it's not Cincinnati or Houston, one of the two new kids on the block who we have history with, who could it be?
Now, who do you want to answer this question first?
You. Kyle answered the first one. I'll let you go.
I'm going to go with West Virginia.
I knew you were going to say West Virginia.
Well, there's a reason why. There's aside from the fact
we played them before.
We played them before. I did one of those top 5 Ask Me Anything things. Someone asked me the question, and I put West Virginia over BYU. It actually was a toss-up between the two. West Virginia, there's one. It's Eastern proximity. It's a little closer. We know from our experiences dealing with Marshall, fans from the state of West Virginia are extremely passionate, and passion,
Lord knows there's nothing else to do up there.
So UCF fans, extremely passionate. You put these two forces together and sparks fly, and love is in the air, and things happen.
That's not the cliche I was looking for there, but okay, let's run with it.
But the truth is, I think that by having such a fiery fan base in Morgantown, you add it with a very fiery fan base in Orlando, and they're fiery for different reasons, but they still have a strong passion and a view of don't tread on me and my territory. Don't insult don't insult my national championship, or else there'll be hell to pay. We've seen it time and time again. On Twitter, West Virginia, very territorial of their fandom. So you put those two together, and it can, if you play them year in, year out, and then multiple sports, and if you can put together good matchups, that hate will grow fast.
West Virginia, by the way, we played them twice in the past. They've won them both, but it was back in 04 and 05. So
yeah, I mean, UCF wasn't at the same level. It's not even close. So I think there's potential.
I should say 03 and 04. Sorry, I was wrong. 03 and 04. I'm sorry. Carry on.
And 03 and 04 are two of the worst years in UCF football history. So I mean, they neither were good. So I mean, UCF was obviously a very different program back then. They were pretty much an FBS bottom feeder. So I think you give them opportunity, let the games play, let things happen. You can stoke those flames, and you can develop a good amount of hate there. We see it with Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's like their fan base. I don't think is quite as fiery as West Virginia. I mean, after all, they burn couches in Morgantown.
Kyle, I'll let you have the last word on this one, since you were a good sport. You played the referee.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, I'm more thinking of myself like Sid Justice in the 90s as a special guest referee when Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan took on Sergeant Slaughter. And
I prefer Mills Lane in Celebrity Deathmatch, but carry on.
Let's get it on.
I'll allow it. Anyways, for those Celebrity Deathmatch fans, you better get that reference.
I love that show.
West Virginia is an interesting choice. I would have said a boring one, but it's an interesting choice. You are right about the passions of the fan base, and it gives you literally nothing else, in my opinion. Let's get a little bit more off the field story here a bit, shall we? For one, I could go Baylor off the bat if they weren't already in whatever kind of mess they are because of the, less than savory things that occurred in their program. Simply the fact that they would have to stare at all the tributes to Blake Bortles in that win, and all of that would be in their crawl, while UCF would glorify that matchup and it being renewed. That has an opportunity to turn into rivalry. And oh, by the way, there's something special to be said to go into another state that is much football Valhalla just as much as Florida and see that battle ensue. And again, Drew, the point you make about the West Virginia fan base is absolutely great, but can we make it a bit more of a football spectacle? That's why I would put Baylor there too. My instinct was to say Oklahoma State, just to rile Jeff because of his love of, or rather lack thereof, of Mike Gundy and the world's greatest mullet. But
he hates Baylor more.
Yeah, I mean, be that as it may. And the other one that slightly intrigues me, I get the BYU old versus new thing, but I'm not feeling that as much. I'm a little curious about how Texas Tech would go. I think that's.
I thought Texas Tech too.
It's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, like they're like the furthest of the furthest.
It's a big public school with a technological background.
Hold it. The dude that just said West Virginia is going to talk trash about it being in the middle of nowhere. You're relieved. Anyways. So either one of the Texas schools, actually, I guess since I'm advocating Houston first and foremost, any of those Texas schools do it for me as far as that. Also, as a consolation, I could get the new kids up and coming programs with Northern Iowa, but the location and literally being out in the middle of nowhere isn't really appealing to me. But I mean, there's kind of a story there. I don't know. For me, it would be Baylor ahead of everything else if it's not Houston.
I've got another one to think about, and it would be TCU, because they also went from the have-nots to the haves.
That's a great point, Drew.
So it's a question of who can do it better and quicker. And I mean, that's kind of like a dark horse one. I mean, it's, obviously you can find a story in any school. You really can. You can manufacture something. You take. I mean, a good rivalry. There's something there that has to be cultivated.
You want to know how many times UCF has played TCU?
Zero times.
Hey,
but that also fits Texas Tech. That's
true.
Oklahoma State. That fits Iowa State, Kansas, but not Kansas State. They played once.
Hey, I led with Baylor. That's all I'm saying.
And they've only played Baylor once.
That's
so there's a lot of opportunity.
And what a time it was, Drew.
It was,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think it comes down to the fact that they play all these schools so little. There's opportunity, and it's going to take time. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's not like, UCF played East Carolina in 1992 and broke the leg of their star quarterback, and they harbored this anger ever since.
Correct.
And then they joined the conference, Conference USA 2005 to get and played again. It's not like that. There's really not much there. UCF and Baylor played, and UCF won, and of course, Baylor wished they won, but I mean, there's not the same type of. It's not like you broke the leg of the star quarterback and derailed the season. It's a different story. So I mean, it's going to take time. Yeah. Could it get there? Sure, but we have to be patient.
I agree.
Yeah.
Hey, but
that's a long memory going back to Marcus Crandall. Wow.
One final thing, gentlemen, the irony in that we're talking about rivalry and you two disagreeing with your point, counterpoint, and all this. The three of us seem to very clearly agree on Houston and its potential to be a fertile ground for a rivalry here in the Big 12.
Oh, I totally agree. I think all the stars are aligned. The fans just have to realize it.
I want a trophy game with Houston, and the trophy should be like a Saturn V rocket.
Hell yeah.
He wants the Warren I-4. Forget everything else.
I want. Yeah, we had the road sign, which I love, by the way.
Well, remember, we joked for the longest time it should be a Bob's Barricade. So I mean, they weren't that far off.
A giant Saturn. Listen, I want to see. I want to see John Rice Plumlee or whoever run across the sideline, and when the clock hits 0, grab a 6-foot-long Saturn V rocket and start running it around the stadium, like flying it around, making airplane noises and stuff. I want to see that. That would be fantastic. It would be so.
What could possibly go wrong?
It would be so much fun.
I get it.
All right.
Okay. The Warren I-4 hits a lot more than the Tussalon 10. I get it.
It's about space superiority, man.
The Star War.
Oh, geez.
Lawsuit.
Yeah, I know, right?
We're in Orlando. Disney owns it. Get them in here.
Yeah. It's the space superiority showdown.
Yeah, it's the Star War. All right. Anyway, check out both of our columns on Black Gold Banneret. Keep the hatred coming on Twitter. It only fuels me.
God, you sound like me. I'm so proud of you.
True.
Brings a tear in my eye.
I've learned over time. I just it's.
God,
I have effect on
let
people.
The hate flow through you.
Love or hate, man. You're gonna remember there. It's do or do not. There is no try. You're either gonna love it or hate it. And we embrace the Sith here. It is black and white. Let's
enjoy this. Gold. Let's enjoy it, and I'll tell you, our chance to take a 2-game lead in the all-time football series this year. This year, you can go out on top. But man, if something goes wrong in that game, oh my God,
you have bigger things to worry about if something goes wrong.
It's out. Yeah, true. The way it's looking for that. Anyway, Black and Gold Banner is where you want to go. All right. Drew, thanks again. And Kyle, thanks again. You guys are heading out. Appreciate you guys. Statboy Drew on Twitter, and also the SOTG for the student of the game. Bryson Turner is going to join me next to talk about UCF and the track and field NCAA championships and wrap up the show, guys. It's been a great 2 segments. We could go on I don't know, this kind of stuff for 3 hours. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And I don't know. It's just, man, what a fun time to be a UCF fan. it's
Kylo Ren, give him more.
Yeah, more. We're back after this. It's the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon back with you here, and joining me now, Bryson Turner, who's been following UCF Track and Field and basically the final UCF sporting event of the 2021-2022 season before we head into the summer and we get ready for football, soccer, and volleyball in the next, let's see, 6, 7, 8, 2 months from now. So is when camps open up. So let's take a look at what UCF athletes were able to do at the NCAA Track and Field Championships in Eugene, Oregon. The highlight for UCF was the 4x100 relay team, who finished in 7th place, earned All-American honors, 43.69. Obviously, always good to get that, to reach that achievement. How did they feel about their performance afterwards? Do they feel like they maximized what they had, or maybe left something on the table?
Well, Coach Boone actually put it very nicely in our interview after the fact, where she talked about how as long as the team improved and make what she called little bits of history, then she considers it a successful meet. And when you look at the 4x100 relay team's performance in Eugene, they actually ran the second fastest 4x100 relay time in program history in their semifinal run with a 43.22. Only Faulkner, Scott, Charles, and Freeman ran a faster one in 2013. And when you put both of their runs from Eugene onto the list of top 10 all time, this specific quartet of Renaya Jones, Sierra Holback, Beyonce DeFreyas, and Asia Wilson have 3 of the top 10 fastest 4x100 relay times in program history. So this was a very, very solid weekend for the 4x100 relay team. And considering 3 of the 4 are going to be coming back next year, Sierra Holback, who is the senior that is graduating, who we talked to after the fact as well. You can watch her interview as well as interviews with Brittany Floyd and the full interview with Coach Boone on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. Speaking of which, I actually have a clip to show you from that Coach Boone interview.
I think overall this was a successful meet. As long as we've come in and improved, we're moving in the right direction. I rate this as a very good stepping stone for the future. Anytime you put points on the board on the big stage, they had to announce us in a lane. So that put UCF out there. And we were in 2 finals, and we had the most variety of student athletes at the national champion I think that UCF has had. I'm not sure if we've ever had a discus thrower make it to the national championship. I'm not, first time for the heptathlon. And last year, Sheer was the first triple jumper, and Renaya was the first, not the first hurdler, I don't think. Well, maybe for outdoors, I think she was. So we continue to make little bits of history, because anytime we accomplish something, it's new for this program, and so that just helps us build for the future. So that's always the goal is to do something different, to make history.
And that was Coach Boone in our interview 2 days after the events in Eugene, Oregon. And I really liked what she had to say. I basically summarized it a little earlier, but I quite liked how she really put stuff into context, because the UCF track and field program isn't like a Florida where they're a juggernaut that can take the team title every year, and how Anna Hall, just practically, just took the heptathlon competition and ran with it. This is one of those things where you want to make little, like she said, little bits of history along the way. Adrian Adams became the first discus thrower to make it to the Eugene. You have Ashira Collins, who's the first ever triple jumper to go to Eugene, make it back for the second time. And then you have Brittany Floyd, who is the first heptathlete to make it to Eugene for the first time. So it's these little bits of history that are what Coach Boone is after for the track and field program. And that's how you can slowly build this program up until you could potentially get it to something where they can compete for the team title. But right now it's all about individual improvement and individual development.
A little bit of a surprise in the 100 hurdles. Of course, Renaya Jones, who made the Olympic trials last year, had such, and blasted onto the scene. This was her big event in the 100 hurdles. She got to the final, but was disqualified. She was out in lane 9, and you did a pretty good breakdown of what really happened. What happened with Renaya? Because, well, first of all, what was her time initially? What would she have gotten? And then what did they get her on? Because this seemed to me kind of be ticky tack.
So her initial time was 13.04 seconds, which would have put her in 8th place. And then the rule that she broke was rule 15.6-2A, which states this: the referee, after consulting with the appropriate officials, such as shall disqualify a competitor who advances or trails a leg or foot outside the hurdle width and below the top horizontal plane or plane extended of the hurdle. I got a little interpretation of this from one of the rules officials. So basically what the idea is that she ended up having a foot outside the width of the hurdle, and it didn't go over where the hurdle would have gone. As if you look back at the video clip, and I think I know where she did it. When I noticed that after the first hurdle, it looked like Renaya was shifted a little bit on the right-hand side of the lane, a little more than she normally is. She does favor the right side of her lane. And so I think what happened is she got a little further to the right than she wanted to. And because of that, her lead leg ended up getting to the side of the hurdle, and it didn't go over the hurdle plane or plane extended, which is basically just the hurdle plane, but extended outwards into empty space. And if you review and then when rules officials reviewed the footage, she saw that she didn't clear the hurdle height with her lead leg. Basically, what the rules official told me is that this type of violation is actually quite common for the outside lanes of lane 9 and 1, and usually happens more in the 400-meter hurdles because of how spaced out the hurdles are. So it's a lot easier for that to happen. But unfortunately, I think in combination of Renaya favoring the right side of her lane and her being on the furthest right lane ended up really biting her, unfortunately, in this scenario. She posted an Instagram post talking about it. So, and talking about how, there's some highs and there's some lows. So I overall, it's still a great season for Renaya. She made it back to the final. I think really it was really unlucky lane placement on her part. And I think that as long as she still improves, then I think it should be fine. So I think it's good. I think she got to where she got last year. She still has plenty more left. And she said that she had Coach Boone said it was more of a team focus with her. And so her getting the hardware with her squad in the 4x100 relay, I think she will definitely take that as a successful season on her part.
I thought that one of the other big highlights, Brittany Floyd, you mentioned her earlier, but I just want to talk a little bit more about her, finishing 16th in the heptathlon. In some of the individual events, she finished 11th in the 800, 9th in the javelin, 14th in the long jump portions of the heptathlon. But that's, to see a UCF athlete, compete in a new event, at that level. Well, the event's not new, but it's new to see a UCF player in that event, or to see a UCF athlete in that event is huge for the program.
Oh yes, I completely agree. I talked about with Coach Boone. Assistant coach Glenn Smith, who coaches the field events, actually recruited Brittany Floyd to transfer here from UAB. And the impact that she had in just the 1 year she's been here is honestly quite astounding. Or even the Brit Floyd ended up finishing with 5,410 points in heptathlon, and that is still, and while that is not her highest scoring heptathlon of the season, it is still highest scoring than the original UCF program outdoor heptathlon record from Jamie Pugh in 2003. So even though she didn't get that, she get as high as she normally did over the rest of the season, it was still better than every other UCF heptathlete before her. However, I think what a big deal about this is it opens the door for Natalia Madison, who is a sophomore. She ended up her high this year was 5,226 points, which is right in Floyd's neighborhood. And I think her influence on her and Holly Castles, who are two of UCF's other heptathletes, is going to be major going forward, especially since she opened the door with getting second team All-American status by finishing 16th. She, after day one, she was in 22nd after day one. So luckily her three of her better events were the last three events, and she ended up getting all the way up to 16th. So I looked, and I think 16th was like the very last spot, first spot on the second team All-American status. So absolutely well done for Brittany Floyd. I think she had a really great one and done year for her at UCF, but I think her biggest impact is going to be what the impact she's had on the rest of UCF's heptathletes. And I'm very interested to see if her work with Natalia Madison could result in another heptathlete getting to Eugene in the near future. We'll just have to see on that.
All right. So the overall successful NCAA championships for UCF, in your opinion?
So that's a really hard thing to say, because there's a couple of qualifying factors. One, Renaya obviously got disqualified. That's not exactly the ideal thing to happen. The bright side is she made it back to the final. The bad news is she ended up getting disqualified, which kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. The other thing is that this squad could easily have been bigger going to Eugene, because Coach Boone mentioned in her interview that she wanted to get more people on the podium, specifically the 4x400 meter relay team. But unfortunately, because of an illness with the team during the East preliminary weekend, they were not able to compete and thus could not make it to Eugene. And Latasha Smith and the 4x400 meter relay team absolutely killed it this year. They broke the school records in the event this year. So I think that if they were to have gone to Eugene, they would have had a very, very respectable performance. So it's unfortunate that they couldn't go, but these are just kind of factors out of this team's control. I think what this is more than anything, and I think Coach Boone really said it best, is that this is a stepping stone for the future. There is patently much more that could have been done with this, that unfortunately just out of a lot of things control just didn't really work out this time. The good news is that the entire 4x400 relay team should be back next year. Samira Bradwell is going to be a senior, so it could potentially be the last time that specific quartet of Smith, Best, Kia Williams, and Samira Bradwell could be back. But I think that what this meet shows us more than anything is that there is a building going around, because it started with Renaya, and it really was all about, after that, building a team around her that can have success and make, like she said, little bits of history along the way. And they've been doing that so far. So while I don't think we've reached the highest point, the peak of this team's ability, I would say this is a promising sign.
All right, cool. So it's Bryson Turner on Twitter, and that concludes the 2021-2022 athletic year for UCF with the NCAA championships. Just like that, we're done. We're looking forward to 2022-2023. As we talked about the upcoming last year in the American Athletic Conference for UCF, which we talked about earlier. And so all of a sudden, things are going to start moving real quick in the next 12 to 18 months for UCF sports. Bryson, thanks again. And we will have, so next week, you said you have one more thing.
Yes. I just want to make a quick shout out to Mark Kostek, who is the secretary rules editor for the NCAA Track and Field Committee. He was the person that I called to help get an interpretation on the rule with Renias. So I very much appreciate his insight on this. And I just wanted to make sure I shouted him out because his insight was very helpful in understanding what exactly happened in that situation.
Cool. All right. Awesome. So again, thanks to him for helping clarify what happened. All right. So that will do it for us for not just the season, but for this week's show. Next week, we begin our Black and Gold Banneret Awards, where it's going to be our nomination show. We're working on those nominees as we speak. We'll have them for you. We will vote on it, and you, the fans, will get to vote on it as well. So as we wrap up, again, thanks to Andrew Glukov, Stat Boy Drew, and Kyle Nash, the SOTG, for the student of the game on Twitter. It's Bryson Turner on Twitter as well. And all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret. Make sure you follow us at UCF Banneret _SBN. Make sure you also follow our Facebook page, facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And of course, follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com for all your UCF sports needs, takes. It's going to be a busy off season. Also follow us on YouTube. Look us up at Black and Gold Banneret on YouTube as well for the latest interviews, press conferences from all UCF media availability that we're able to get to. So for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next week for our Black and Gold Banneret Awards nomination show. Until then, enjoy the week.